My first pranayam routine. I purchased BKS Iyengar's The Illustrated Light on Yoga. His description of pranayam awakened in me an unshakable desire to practice it intensively. In the last part of the book there was a prudent warning. Pneumatic tools can cut through the hardest rock. In pranayam, the yogi uses his lungs as pneumatic tools. If they are not used properly, they destroy both the tool and the person using it. Faulty practice puts undue stress on the lungs and diaphragm. The respiratory system suffers and the nervous system is adversely affected. The very foundation of a healthy body and a sound mind is shaken by a faulty practice of pranayam. This sentence ignited my immoderate will to experience all its power, to the point of dying in it. Figuratively speaking, what would have frightened others emboldened me. If this discipline would bring about an authentic psychological earthquake, well, I was on the right track. Of course, some prudence was necessary. An intensive practice had to be reached gradually and each session had to be carried out with extreme care. From now on, I practiced daily the two breathing exercises called Nadi Shodhana and Ujjayi with bandhas, muscle contraction, and kumbhaka, breath retention. I sat on the edge of a pillow, in the half lotus position, with my back straight. I focused with zeal on applying the instructions flawlessly but with a creative spirit. I concentrated keenly on the alternate feelings of coolness and warmth produced by the air on the fingers and on the palm of the right hand used to open and close the nostrils. The pressure, the smooth flowing of the breath, every detail was pleasant. Becoming aware of each peculiarity of the exercise helped me maintain vigilant attention without becoming stressed. Good effects. On different occasions I noticed a change in my mind's global functioning, memory, concentration. I could especially observe this during my exams. Before the test began, a little bit of pranayam would endow me with a sudden calm and self-possession, no matter what the examiner's attitude was. I would not feel a bit nervous. I was able to maintain the necessary self-control to master my speech, often succeeding in expressing clearly not only what I knew, but also something more, which just then seemed to become evident for the first time. Day after day, I could perceive pranayam's potential acting on my side. I was certain my old school friend had told the truth. These exercises can change a person inside. It had to be true. Learning pranayam was like learning to play a musical instrument. The instrument was always with me. Pranayam appeared to me the most perfect of all arts, with no intrinsic limits. I couldn't understand how I had waited so much before taking on this commitment seriously. Now, at least, the moment had come. During the day, I found my perception of things had changed. My eyes searched for the most intense colors, fascinated by them as if they were close to revealing an unknown reality lying beyond the material. Sometimes in the first sunny days after winter, when the skies were crystalline and as blue as they had ever been, I would sit in the open air and contemplate my surroundings. In a bushy ditch covered with ivy, the sun shed its light upon flowers that a few weeks before were blooming during the cold and now, heedless of the mildest days, still lingered in their spellbinding glory. I was deeply inspired. I would close my eyes and rely on an inner radiance accompanied by a sensation of pressure on my heart. At that time, my internal life was still split between two interests which I perceived as two dimensions having nothing in common. On one side were esoteric matters which had guided my search toward yoga discipline, which I conceived to be an efficacious tool for purifying and controlling the mind. On the other side was the aspiration toward the ideal world of beauty which I tried to evoke through the study of literary works and listening to classical music. I never imagined that the first interest could lead me to a most intense way to enjoy the second. It was reasonable to hope that pranayam could give me a permanent base of mental clarity, helping me to not spoil the fragile miracle of an encounter with beauty with a jumble of thoughts. But I could never have imagined that pranayam had the power of multiplying the experience of the sublime or even make it spring up from nothing. I often repeated inside myself and sometimes quoted to my friends this verse from the Bhagavad Gita. The yogi knows the eternal joy beyond the pale of the senses which the reason cannot grasp. Dwelling in this reality, he moves not thence. He has found the treasure above all others. There is nothing higher than this. Having achieved it, he shall not be moved by the greatest sorrow. This is the real meaning of yoga, a deliverance from contact with pain and sorrow. While repeating it, I was actually saving that joy. On a quiet afternoon walk among trees just before sunset, I quickly glanced now and then at text from one of the Upanishads, ancient Sanskrit sacred texts, that I had with me. One particular sentence awakened an instantaneous realization, "Thou art that." I closed the book and repeated this short sentence as if in a trance. My rational mind was able to grasp but not fully accept the incommensurable implication of the statement. It meant that it was I that was the unbelievably delicate green light filtering through the leaves, bearing witness to the spring that brought new life. Back home, I did not even try to put down on paper the numerous moments of grace I experienced from this realization, nor could I have. My only wish was to delve further and further into this new inner source of understanding and enlightenment. Panning my sight around, a landscape would appear amongst the leaves and a group of distant houses surrounding a bell tower. Only that sort of light could instill a superhuman poise into my being and give me the intuition that the traces of the ineffable, primeval cause of all things was not to be sought in books, in reasoning, but only in the realm of beauty. A spiritual experience. The first glimpse of the spiritual reality may manifest as a series of bliss waves rising through the spine and entering the brain. This experience usually lasts from few instants to a couple of minutes. Sometimes it is like having a volcano erupting inside, a rocket shooting up through the spine. Other times, it may appear like an intense bliss in the chest region. Suddenly you are inside an immense joy and wake up with tears in your eyes. You are filled with the euphoria obtained by this short but unforgettable plunge into eternity. Frequently this experience is called Kundalini awakening. The concept of samadhi, or religious ecstasy, is very akin to Kundalini awakening. Kundalini is Sanskrit for called. It is conceived as a particular energy called like a serpent in the root chakra. The representation of being called like a spring conveys the idea of untapped potential energy having its seat at the base of the spine. The concept of Kundalini is very useful since it can be utilized to express what generally happens along the spiritual path. Some authors foster the idea that this great concentration of energy has its seat in our entire body, not only at the base of the spine. It sleeps in our body, underneath the layers of our consciousness, waiting to be aroused by spiritual discipline. Yoga teaches to harness this tremendous power through specific techniques and guide its rising from the Muladhara up through Sushumna, activating each chakra. It has been explained that when Kundalini arrives at the Sahasrara chakra, it bestows mystical illumination. Sometimes the experience comes before any yoga practice is done. It may spring from the vibratory shock produced by reading a religious text or the biography of a saint, when the idea of the vastness of the spiritual reality creates a sort of dizziness. You feel that this idea is capable of sweeping away all your certitudes. Some were so elated by their experience that they wrote about it with perhaps too much grandeur, placing too much emphasis on it, discerning implications it has not. I remember an article in a specialized magazine in which the woman who had this experience attributed the event to an imaginary individual who, purportedly, granted her every intimate detail. You understand that it is the lady herself to write, since it is highly improbable that another person had communicated her such profusion of details of the event. Her alleged act of humility was annihilated by the title she gave to her article, Foreigners of a New Race. She gave the impression of not having understood the teaching contained in the experience. In her description, Kundalini awakening happened in her body as a privilege obtained by divine intervention. We know it is no privilege at all. It is a natural event.